Hey guys, today I had the pleasure of sitting down with Raeza Ibrahim. He's a director at TSMP as a dispute resolution lawyer. We had a fantastic chat. He's a Renaissance man, somebody who I've admired for many years. He was on the board of directors at Pandemonium. He's a theatre lover, a fellow theatre lover, a foodie, a pool and snooker player, and someone that I really enjoyed chatting with. I hope you enjoyed the discussion as much as I did. Cheers. Raeza, how are you?
It's bright and early. Not that early, though. It is a Sunday, but I'm feeling pretty good. Thank you.
I've been looking forward to having you on the show. Thank you for making the time.
Not at all. I've seen so many episodes so far. It's been so diverse. You've had my sister on here as well. So hopefully I can deliver a different perspective to show some family variety.
Well, we've got a lot in common, so I want to talk about some of the things outside of work. But for the very few that don't know you, can you please just give a quick intro as to who you are?
Yes. So my name is Raeza. I am by profession a dispute resolution lawyer. So I'm Singapore qualified, and over here we have a fused profession, which means I do both solicitors' work as well as advocates' work. But mainly I do go to court, or if I'm not in court, I might be in arbitration, and it's all manner of disputes. So long as there are two or more people disagreeing and they are unable to resolve their disagreement, they're probably going to be calling me.
Okay, I love it. Well, look, let's wind back the clock.
Okay.
We talked off camera about our love for theatre, but what did you think you wanted to be? Because did you always know you're going to be a lawyer? Probably not.
Absolutely not. I'm gonna give an honest look at the Asian perspective.
Yeah.
Like many, my parents were very keen for me to explore the arts when I was younger. So I played your standard instruments. I had piano lessons to an acceptable standard. I also played the drums and keyboards and things like that. I explored, and usually Asian parents will support that. But I also enjoyed theater. I enjoyed going to the theater, and then I enjoyed being part of it. I started with the school's drama club at age 13, and then it sort of snowballed from there. And I continued with that. I think by the time I'd gotten to university, I'd probably done, I want to say, about 60 different productions in different capacities. Wow. It was a sort of thing where I wanted to understand every part of it. I mean, a lot of people will see the person that's on stage, just the lead actor, and aspire towards that. And I think initially I was no different. But over time, I realized that I enjoyed the whole experience of the theater making. You know, what makes things truly powerful is a mixture of everyone doing their jobs very well. And I'll give you the best example. I mean, in film, for example, when you see a very beautiful scene, whether it is as epic as The Lord of the Rings or as intimate as a dance scene in Scent of a Woman, it's a mixture of very powerful acting and delivery, but it's also the lighting, it's the sound, it's the thunderous environment created by an ensemble of strings. And I wanted to understand and enjoy all of that. So I spent probably by the end of university as much time directing and working on lighting design and sound design as I did on stage. And it's given me an interesting perspective about just generally how to do things.
Well, it probably gave you a better insight, so you were an even better actor on stage. Know what happened behind it.
I think so. I mean, the first part of that is that a lot of actors are prima donnas.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a certain amount of God complex that's necessary to do that job.
Yeah.
But equally, if you understand what the lighting designer is trying to do, if you understand what the sound designer is trying to do, what the conductor is trying to do, then you can work with them to harmonize and create the shared vision. So certainly, yes. I mean, understanding how the lights hit you. I mean, right now there are two pointed at us, but you know, for me, with my background, I know that if I don't just look straight ahead to you, but if I just cheat a little to the right, it's going to make me look right. It's going to make your production qualities go up, and we all benefit collectively.
I love it. Well, you know, actually, there's a misnomer about actors and lawyers and people in sales, but I find that some of the very best people in their craft who are considered to be extroverts are actually introverts. Some of the very best actors are introverts, right? Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
I don't know. It depends on the time of the day that you caught me. I like to think that deep down I'm probably more of an introvert.
Yeah.
But with an extroverted exterior that I can turn on.
And most people probably won't believe that about you, right?
No, I don't think so. I think it comes from a personal belief that everything stems from quiet confidence. And for me, quiet confidence starts from how you control your inner self.
Yeah.
More so than being somewhat reckless outside. Everything is measured and controlled and well thought of. And this is probably a more recent realization for me in my 30s, because I think working life in my 20s was very high paced, and you don't really have a lot of time to think about what is truly motivating you. And in my 30s, as I started to expand towards more senior roles, more management, even some teaching, that sort of put me down this path where I had to really know, what am I all about? Which I think, and unfortunately, too many people don't have the time to really dwell on. And I think that's a bit of an introverted activity, really sitting down, maybe in a beautiful setting like this garden here, sitting down every morning before you start your day and sort of ask yourself, what am I about today? Like how much closer are the things that I'm doing today taking me on the path that I want to achieve by my last breath?
I love that. But you're so true, because I think a lot of us fall into jobs or careers that naturally, may not be our calling. And I think if you reach a certain level of success, typically when you hit your 40s, most people start questioning what they're doing, why they're doing it. And one of the things I've always admired about you, I said this earlier, you're a Renaissance man. You've tried so many different things. And I remember when I first the first time I met you, it was in your family home, and you had a snooker table. Now, how did your love of snooker come about, and what is your maximum break? On a full-size table?
No, it wasn't a snooker table. It was an American pool, but it was competition size.
Okay.
It was the large 9-foot table.
Yeah.
So origin story for that, a little cloudy, but I think I was 14 or 15, and I stayed at the boarding school at ACS.
Okay.
And the reason for that was I wasn't a great student, and their program is that if you weren't academically gifted, you could still join the school and provide all your talents, but you have to spend a bit of time under supervision. And I thought that was great. But the boys there, a couple of them that I hung up with, just happened to enjoy playing pool.
Yeah.
And so I would tag along, as you do when you're 14, to go and go to the pool halls. I won't lie, there were also girls there. That does help.
And by the way, that's probably why you went into theatre to begin with, was it? That's why I did.
It is. I mean, there is a misconception that all men who are involved in theatre are of a certain nature, and perhaps prefer men as opposed to women. I can honestly say that was not my experience throughout all of my school life, both in Singapore and at university.
Yeah.
But yes, I think inevitably your crowd will take you places.
Yeah.
And that was the case both for American pool, picking that up. And it turns out I got rather good. The motivation probably wasn't that great, because I wanted to be good, because when people see that you're good at something, it makes you attractive.
Yeah.
So naturally, if you find something that you sort of partially enjoy and maybe can take you on a path to seeming attractive, I think you'll invest some time into that. And there was a period of time where actually I worked a little bit with the national team, because I practiced very hard, and I convinced my parents to purchase a okay table to have at home so that I could work on my technique. Plus, if you watch enough films, you realize that playing pool is one of those social activities that men do in the bar, which you can either wager on or build some good connections with. I would say that it is maybe, if golf as networking is S tier, I'd say playing pool and tennis is probably A tier. And it's even more social because you don't have to get sweaty and you don't need apparatus.
Yeah, and listen, actually, because most people play, but when someone's good,
Yeah.
you say, "Oh wow." But it's normally most people that are good. It's misspent youth in England, anyway.
No, but it definitely is. It's probably too many nights in the pub. But there's always a backstory, and it's a great conversation opener as well. I mean, I was speaking to someone about this. A lady friend asked me about the different male nods, and I think similar to how we all know about the rules of the bathroom as men, there are some other rules that we know about. And sometimes a fellow bro will give you a downward nod, and sometimes they'll give you an upward nod, and there's different meanings to each of them.
I like that.
Like if you turn up in a bar with a beautiful lady, a man passing by will give you a knowing nod to say, "Well done, sir. Well done." But it's just one of those skills, and I, maybe subtly and not intentionally, throughout life, I've always wanted to acquire some of those skills which will allow a fellow man to pass me by and say,
"Really?
Yes."
So interesting.
Yeah, I think there's a nice connection to it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I played, so I grew up, and in the primary middle school I went to, there was a women's refuge for beaten women.
Okay.
And so unfortunately the kids that were there came from a very difficult background, and they were cycled in and out because they were there temporarily. And my mum worked for the local government. So there was an after school club specifically for those kids. And most of them were only there for 2, 3, 4 months. And you had to be from an underprivileged family to go to the after school club.
Yeah.
We were there because my mum worked for the government, and we were there for about 8, 9 years. And so there was table tennis and there was pool, and you became tough because these guys were tough. A lot of their dads were in prison, and they were a little bit disruptive. So that's how I got to play pool. But it's just a great game. And I joined the British club because they had 2 Benson and Hedges World Championship tables, which I'm really upset because they got rid of them.
Yeah.
And they had to change the pockets because the pockets were too tight. So I can't even imagine what a tournament table is like how accurate you have to be as a snooker player. But I just think it's such a skillful game. Like anything, like if you play table tennis, anything you do at a high level, you realize, I've got this far, and then there's many, many levels above that.
Well, I want to add another level of skill to that, because most social interactions that will involve a billiards table is usually at a watering hole.
Yeah.
So in addition to your native raw skills, there's also your skills with drink.
Yeah.
Because drink will go up as well.
Yeah.
And at the end of the night, if you're still winning and you've had your pints, that is at least 2 nods from the gentleman in the room.
Well, it's there's that quote from Rocky when he's been battered, and which one should I hit? Hit the one in the middle. But that's the same kind of thing when you're playing pool, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So then tell us, how did you get into law? What was the turning point?
I don't think I got into it by pure choice, if I can put it that way. When I was 18, as most are in Singapore, you finish your A-levels. Nowadays, of course, the kids will do the IB program. But nevertheless, around that age, 18, 19, you start to think about your university options. And I don't think I had a great amount of direction. Certainly, after about 6 years of doing all forms of theater, that was certainly a passion that I wanted to pursue. And I did actually attend some interviews for some of the more prestigious acting schools around the world. And there was some interest. But ultimately, I ended up in law school. And there's certainly some family elements of pressure there.
Of course.
My father had been a lawyer at that stage for about 20 plus years, it being a second career for him. He didn't start out in lawyering. And of course, there's further family pressure because his eldest stepbrother was Singapore's first Attorney General.
I didn't know that.
So I think there's actually a road named after him. And the story that is told to us is that because he was Attorney General, his NRIC number is S000003.
Wow.
Oh, I beg your pardon, sorry, 002.
Okay.
003 is Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, and 001 was the first president, Yusof Ishak.
Wow.
So that's the family lineage and heritage. So there was some element of, well, you have pedigree, you might as well use it, very Asian. And so I suppose the idea was that if I wasn't sure of what I wanted to do, law represents a door opener in that the skills that you learn could be transferable to other things. But after I finished my law degree, then you go through the process of qualifying to be a lawyer, and you sort of have your choice. You decide, is it going to be in the UK? Is it going to be in Singapore, some other jurisdiction? And then you commit to a year or two of further training to be qualified.
Did you think that, because you were in the UK for uni, you were Bristol, right?
Yes, Bristol.
Great party town, by the way, as you well know.
Yeah.
but were you conflicted, like to stay on in the UK or to come home?
Yes, certainly I was. I mean, after 3 years, I thought, okay, I'll try this out as a career, but I was still confronted with that choice to do it in the UK or to come back to Singapore. Ultimately, I chose Singapore. In some ways, I think the choice was made for me because around the time that I graduated, this was 2010. I think the politics about international students had somewhat pivoted in the UK. A new Home Secretary had come into power. She would later become the Prime Minister. And generally, I think the tone had changed from, please stay, we really want you to work hard for us, to thanks for your cash, goodbye. And because of the change in the immigration policy, I think I made a decision that I wasn't going to stay and battle it out. And I'd rather go where I'm wanted. And that was a hard one because I did actually interview fairly well with some Magic Circle solicitor firms in London, and there were at least 2 opportunities which I could have walked into had I wanted. But it's a pity, but no regrets. I think overall, I like the Singapore market. I like what Asia and Southeast Asia particularly represents, and the opportunities that are here. So I think it was a good decision.
Well, I think also for you you're unique in Singapore anyway. You know, I would imagine having, you know, studied abroad and coming back with those qualities would help further position you. My question to you is, did you go into the family business straight away?
No.
You didn't? What was your journey?
No. So...
Because that would have been a consideration, right?
Yes. I was very ill prepared. Not your typical Singaporean. So I didn't familiarize myself properly with either the formal or the informal processes. Generally speaking, when you want to become a lawyer in Singapore, even whilst you're still at university, you start that process. You start interning with law firms with the idea of securing a training contract with them. And while many of my peers were doing that, I did not. I spent summers enjoying myself and having fun. So when I graduated, I came back and I had 0 secured contracts. I had to rely on my father's friends to offer a place to me. And there's a fairly comical story that I tell everyone about it, and it is 100% true. I ended up doing my training contract with a very prestigious law firm in Singapore called Drew & Napier, with their disputes department, and under the head of their disputes department, who is a senior counsel. As it were, he and my father were good friends from the past, and in fact, as a younger boy, I had gone to his house for a family occasion. I had no idea who he was and his office. So when I came back, there I was. This is end of 2010. Still battered from university with my spiky hair, a little bit of red highlights, eyebrow piercing, scruffy. And I had come back and I was looking for my training position because I needed a job by January, and we had hit December. So I think my father had given Uncle Jimmy a call and said, look, can you take him in? Do you remember him? He was a fun kid, you know, he sings and things like that. It'll be fun. And as it turns out, that night, Jimmy's wife was having her birthday celebrations at a country club. And I think what started out as a joke ended up being, why don't you bring him along for this dinner, which you're already coming to? And Raeza can do a song, and if it's any good, we'll hire him.
Wow.
So this is what was relayed to me. I mean, I don't know the truth, that it's all hearsay.
Yeah.
But I'm panicked, and I'm still with my spiky hair. I put on the nicest clothes I had, which was not very nice. And I turned up for this dinner. And my father went to sit with all the old fogies, and I was placed at a table of a group of gentlemen who would later be my colleagues. And the looks that they initially gave me,
I can imagine,
were not great. And they all tell me that, you know, they took one look up and down and said, oh God, it's going to be one of those ones. And then I got invited on stage to sing Let It Be by the Beatles with the house band.
Did you choose the song, or?
I think the band leader came to me and said, we'll only do old songs, so within that, work with us.
Okay.
So I chose a Beatles song. It was okay, not the best performance, but it was passable. And I was offered, after that, Uncle Jimmy led me to the table and told my future colleagues, oh, by the way, the kid with the spiky hair with the eyebrow thing, he's joining us in January.
There and then. I love it.
But suddenly I was also told in no uncertain terms, while my foot was in the door, I'd have to earn my place there.
100%. You'd have to deliver.
Exactly. And I'd like to think that I did. And it was, the hardest part was probably taking out the eyebrow piercing 2 weeks later. But that's how I got my foot in with really great dispute practice in Singapore. But it was a strange journey since then. So that's taken us to the start. This is January 2011. So I start as a trainee at Drew & Napier, and I have to go through a 12-month stint, both actually working as a trainee as well as a further course. But eventually I pass all of that, and I'm on the doorstep of being called to the bar. But there is a side twist amidst this training period, because in early 2012, I get itchy for the theater. And when I left university, I also made a promise to myself, a very solemn promise, to say that no matter what, even if I go down this law path, I'm going to get back to the stage at least once. At least once in my life, I'm going to do a performance and be paid for it as a professional. Mm-hmm. So whilst I was doing all my training, I continued to audition. And I went to an open audition with about 120 or 150 other people with Pandemonium Theatre. That was in early 2011, I think. And lo and behold, I got cast in a musical. It was called Spring Awakening. The US version had won a Tony Award in 2007, I think. And it's a fairly large cast of, I think, 12 to 15. So I get called back for the audition. The last audition, we do tryouts, and they offer me the part.
Wow.
But here I am in a law firm doing my training contract. So quite sheepishly, I go to my then boss and I say, look, this opportunity has come. I'm a young man. I don't know when this will ever come again. He interrupts me and says, go forth, my son. I understand entirely. It turns out that he, in spite of being a senior counsel, top of his game, always loved music, performance, singing. And there was a point of time when he was a trainee that he dabbled and wanted to be a musician himself. Oh, wow. So he understood this itch.
Yeah.
And he said, yeah, take as much time as you need to and then come back and finish your training contract. So I segued out for 3 months to do a musical with Pandemonium in the middle of my training contract.
Wow.
And
that's unheard of.
We did 30 shows. It was a 6-week...
Was that many shows?
6-week rehearsal period. It was a gamble on their part. They did 30 shows. So it was a full Broadway 8 shows a week, which is brutal.
It is brutal.
Absolutely brutal on you.
Which day was the matinee on? Saturday?
Well, there were some weeks where we did double Saturday and double Sunday.
Jeez.
And there were a couple of weeks where we did the Wednesday matinee for school kids.
Jeez.
And but it was a very tiring show. It involved trampolines hidden on stage. There were flips and dancing and songs. It was a marathon. But I did it, all 30 shows, and then I returned to lawyering.
Yeah.
And I got called to the bar. And the moment I got called to the bar, I quit. I quit my job. My then mentor, and he's now a senior counsel as well, he left the profession midway during my training stint to think about life because his career was not panning out exactly the way that he wanted. When he came back, he had a vision, a dream. He wanted to start his own practice and he was looking for the right people to join him. And I remember this clearly because it felt a little sexual predatorish. He stays in Serangoon Gardens, and in front of his house there's a park, and it's quite close to where I live. And I think it was the night before or the night of the day that I got called to the bar. He called me and said, I want to have a chat with you. And I said, sure, no problem. I'll come over. It was about 7 p.m.
I'm wondering where this is going.
7 p.m. in the park. The only reason why I felt comfortable is because it's Singapore and all the parks are fairly well lit, and it was just across the road. So I feel someone would have heard me if I screamed. But we sat in the park, and he told me that he had just gone on this huge road trip with his family, and he was very clear in his mind. It was time to do his own thing, and he wanted to know if I was keen to join as a newly called lawyer. And this sort of thing is unheard of. I mean, the chance to start a new firm is a rare thing in itself.
Yeah.
The chance to do so when you haven't even had a day or two as a practicing lawyer is tremendous pressure. And the truth is, he's obviously a persuasive advocate. He wouldn't let me leave until I gave my answer. So we sat there for about 4 hours.
I love it. I love it.
So we sat there for about 4 hours, and I think even then I didn't give a final answer. But I realized sometimes life gives you interesting opportunities.
Yeah.
And you can be afraid, you can be nervous, you can be unsure. But those aren't reasons not to do it. That's just confidence and reasonable doubt and thinking, and it's just showing you're a rational person.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I said yes. So within days of getting called to the bar and having a job at easily the most prestigious dispute practice in town, I resigned. And within about 3 months, I was helping set up what is now a leading boutique dispute law firm in Singapore. And it was just the three of us. There was the team lead, one senior associate, and myself.
Brilliant.
Newly qualified. But credit to my then former employers, because they still showed tremendous confidence in me, even though I told them that I was leaving. Within a week of being called to the bar, I did my first contested application by myself in court. No one assisting. And in the last 3 days before I left the firm, we were handling a fairly large international arbitration. It was about, amazingly, shipping issues under Swiss law, which is dramatically challenging given that Switzerland doesn't have any water around it.
It's like landlocked.
Yes. As a landlocked country, shipping law is a strange one to talk about. But the team had to cross-examine a Swiss law pseudo-professor about Swiss law issues. And we had split up the tasks, and I was going to conduct part of this cross-examination. And even though I was leaving and even though I was so junior, they let me do that for half a day with this Swiss law expert. So kudos to them for still having faith in me in spite of all that. So therefore, still in year 1 of practice, I finished that, got my experience, and started with what is now called Providence Law Asia. And it was just the three of us in a tiny office. I remember when I first went into the space, we didn't have enough chairs, but we were going to trial 2 weeks later. So we worked on everything together, from a document management system to buying the books to buying the printer and the chairs to organizing things with vendors to meeting with clients to working out an internship program. We did that all in 3 months while doing all the legal work. And that was incredible. Yeah. Unfortunately, it didn't fully work out because I got severely burnt out. Mostly, I think, my own doing. And within a year, I had left that firm and returned to Drew Napier,
Okay.
where I stayed on for 5 more years until I became a junior partner. And that was in 2018.
So it's interesting because they typically, when you resign, especially after such a short period, most employees will just burn that bridge and be done with you. But the fact that they didn't led to you going back there.
Yeah, some people ask me how that's actually possible. And it's about relationships.
Yeah.
There is, and you know what, this is particularly pertinent in the legal field because people do move around fairly often nowadays. And it's a question of how you depart someone. And I don't know if I'm an expert at this, but twice now, managing partners have told me that they wanted to frame out my resignation letters because they found it thoughtful and beautiful and meaningful, which I took as a compliment. But it's a question of how you deal with something. A lot of people leave their current jobs for a variety of push factors and a variety of pull factors. But just because there are parts of something you didn't like, it doesn't mean you have to, blow things up in
100%.
flames. You'll never know, particularly in the legal industry, when it is you'll have to collaborate with your old practice.
It's almost inevitable. You'll end up working with those people again in some guise.
Exactly. And you never know whether you might go back if the things that pushed you out in the first place disappear or dissolve.
Yeah.
The circumstances change. So why is it that you have to go in a cloud of smoke and fire? It's not necessary. And so I've always made it a point, even as I've made my moves, that I explained my moves. And oftentimes when I have moved since, I also gave the organizations I was at opportunities to fix the things that I didn't like. And the move was the last stage where those things couldn't be fixed. And that makes it rational. You give people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
More recently, I've taken on some roles where I actively am involved with young lawyer training or about sort of addressing this aspect of lawyer attrition in Singapore. And I do that through the Singapore Academy of Law. I'm currently one of the co-chairs of this young members working group where we look into these issues of the problems that young lawyers face and what drives people out of the profession and how we can do better to keeping them in it. And when I do get a chance to speak to a lot of the younger lawyers, they tend to leave in a ball of fire.
Yeah.
Because there are so many things that they didn't like where they're working. And you know what? That's absolutely fine. You absolutely have a right to say that I didn't like this, I didn't want this, it didn't work for me. But where I feel a little bit disappointed is that having arrived at that position where they've decided, okay, there are 5 things that I didn't like, they never took the next step of telling their supervisors, telling management that there are these 5 things and giving them a chance to fix it. Because for me, if I have 5 things I don't like and I voice it out and management either ignores or rejects my concerns or tries to fix it but fails, then it's fine. I've given the right opportunity and the right chance for someone to do a thing that helps me. And if at that point I choose to leave, I know that I've exhausted every possible way of fixing the problem before I'm moving on.
Mm-hmm.
And then I feel absolutely at that stage, move on.
Yeah, you're at peace with it.
Exactly. And you know what? In some ways, I think your management will also appreciate the departure.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you've given them enough face to try and solve it. And if it's not in it for them to solve it, then so be it. You're actually parting on good terms, even though these 5 things might have existed.
You're probably the only person I've spoken to that have taken due consideration about resigning, because I draft all the candidates that we place. I draft the resignation letter for a variety of reasons. And nowadays, unfortunately, a lot of people feel they can't say too much. They want to be brief to the point, for a variety of different reasons. But even, I'll give you an example, when we have individuals that have gone through 4, 5, 6 rounds of interviews, and at the end it comes to nothing, I'll actually write to them and explain why, because they've given so much time. So I actually think these things, they have a lot of meaning.
Absolutely. People sometimes forget that we're humans.
Yeah.
And on either side of it are humans. I do know what you're talking about, the idea of writing less. And certainly if you leave an organization and there's still lingering claims issues, maybe with an ESOP or, some sort of buyback of shares or equity that you've been given, then yes, I mean, you do have to be careful about maybe assigning blame or whether or not it's going to trigger any clauses. But even then, if anything, I would say it is even more important when there are lingering issues that relationships are restored, because odds are you're going to be in a better place to resolve those lingering issues if the relationships are good.
Yeah.
And it costs you nothing to be polite and kind.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like a breakup.
Yeah.
And the reality is, let's say you're in Singapore and for whatever reason, your personal relationship has failed.
Yeah.
Be it with your boyfriend, girlfriend, and everything in between. Because it's Singapore, this is such a great possibility that you're not only going to interact with this person again because they are already in your social circles, but you're going to know a friend of a friend, and they may know someone who's a potential future business partner, or some way they're going to be still connected with you. What is the value of torching things?
Yeah.
And it's sometimes counterintuitive. And here, maybe I'm sort of descending into my philosophy about negotiation as well. But I like to think about it. This is going to sound incredibly silly. I used to play this game when I was a kid called The Sims.
Okay.
And it was about almost godlike control over these characters, and you could build houses for them. And every time the two Sims would meet, there would be this triangle above their head, or maybe like a diamond prism. And if the interaction was good, it would glow in green and you'd see a little plus mark. And if the interaction was bad, it would glow in red and you see a little negative mark. And the quality of your relationship would be on an objective scale. And it would either improve or worsen with every interaction.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that game taught me just about everything I need to know about.
It's spot on, just life.
Exactly. And the truth of the matter is, that is probably the most accurate depiction of our everyday life.
Yeah.
Every interaction we have someone is either a plus or a minus. I don't believe you can leave an interaction with no change.
Yeah.
It's either a plus or a minus. And so for people who are leaving their jobs or trying to resolve something, my question to them is, are you creating pluses or minuses? Yeah. And why are you doing it? Is there a need for this? I'm often engaged for legal fights, but more often than not, that converts to a negotiation.
Yeah.
I very rarely encourage someone to go all the way to court or all the way to arbitration and fight till the end.
Yeah.
And it's not because I can't handle it. Quite frankly, I enjoy the advocacy part before a judge or a tribunal. I enjoy that the most. It's because it's not in their interest.
Yeah.
The only people who truly win in a fight to the death are the warriors that fight it.
Yeah.
Not the people in the background.
Yeah.
If you think about the real wars of modern days, the people who suffer are the ones back home who have to convert their factories to make bullets and ammunition, who don't have enough food and who have to pay for the war. Yes, the warriors may suffer in death, but as long as you live, you'll be paid. So quite frankly, it's true, the statement that probably the lawyers earn the most from a fight to the death.
Of course.
And the problem with it is that those battles are win-loss. It's win-lose, always. There's no exceptions. And I cannot guarantee success.
Yeah.
As a lawyer, however good I am, however great the facts are, so long as decisions are made by human beings, there is a chance you will lose. Why negotiate and have a settlement or a resolution? Because with creativity, we can structure something where everyone is partially winning, enough to sustain your interests, enough to sustain your business, and most important, 100% certainty.
Yeah.
And that is more valuable than anything
Wise
else.
words, man. I think, well, if you go back to my mum taught me how to write thank you notes, right? And what I've realized is especially nowadays with social media, but your brand, your name, your reputation is everything in all walks of life. So I always say to people, how you do anything is how you do everything, and go all in, right, and give it your very best in those moments. So how did that bring you to working with your dad?
So once I had become a junior partner at Drew Napier, they call it an associate director, it sort of signals a mentality switch in your career. You're no longer sort of rank and file. You already know how to do your job. The focus now becomes, how do I make money for myself? How do I build my own reputation? And that got me thinking about systems, ways of working. And here I'm going to make some very sweeping statements. Generally speaking, the larger the organization that you work for, the more rigid structures are to do things. Not to say that things can't change, but it's much harder as an individual to influence the way that things are done. Conversely, in a smaller outfit, you have freedom to make changes, to customize to the way that you want to work, to the way that you think it should be done. And so when I hit that milestone in 2018, it got me thinking, how exactly do I want to practice law for the next phase of my career? And I had very diverse options available to me. I could have stayed in Drew Napier, which I classify as a large domestic practice. I could have moved to an international firm, which has even larger reach. I could have gone to the disputes team at, an in-house disputes team, which was becoming more popular, for example, in either the tech companies or the large banks. They have these global disputes teams. That was another option. Or I could move into a boutique or smaller practice. So ultimately, I went with boutique or small practice and with my father's firm. And I think the biggest pull factor was the opportunity to really think about and test how I wanted to do work. And that was scary. I think in a nutshell, it was scary because you don't know how it's going to work out. And I think, if I had to give myself a report card score for that stint between 2018 to 2024, I think the highest I can give myself is a B. I spent a lot of time literally sitting down and thinking about process and flows, and then a lot of time experimenting with different apps, with different tools that were available to me, and then even more time implementing, because actually change management is the worst part of any system overhaul. But I made a lot of mistakes as well. Focusing so much on process, I probably didn't focus enough on increasing my client pool, or particularly a client pool of the work that I wanted to be doing. And that led to inefficiencies itself. And that period has actually brought me to a realization that, in truth, I don't think law firms should be managed by lawyers. Which is somehow, it's a little controversial, I think. And I don't think many law firms in Singapore would agree with me, at least not based on their current structures. But I feel...
Well, having like a COO or someone that's understanding that side of the business certainly helps.
Yes. I mean, we're at an interesting inflection point for the legal industry in Singapore, because the proposition in Singapore for lawyers used to be very different. It used to be that we are very skilled but very cheap. That was the selling point to the rest of the world, or at least regionally. I don't think we're very cheap anymore. There are certainly places around the world that can provide legal services for less money. So the idea has to be that we are very good and very efficient, but are we truly very efficient? And this isn't a criticism of Singapore. I think this is, for me, a criticism of all law firms everywhere. Nobody is truly efficient. And it's because of old ways of thinking. And that is a problem. But the change that needs to happen, I don't think can be driven by managers who aren't looking at this problem full time.
Yeah.
And the issue, at least in Singapore, is that a lot of the leadership of both large and small practices are lawyers themselves. They are doing the job in court. They're doing the job in boardrooms. They're meeting clients on the daily. And this idea of conceptualizing change and carrying it out is just too much to fit into that schedule.
Yeah.
And it'll either happen far too slowly or it won't happen at all.
Yeah.
And that's a problem.
That's the dichotomy. I mean, one of the things I wanted to go back and ask you, I'm just curious. We've seen a lot of people leaving the legal industry, my wife included.
Yes.
And some people move in house, some people leave completely. I think one of the key things is that a lot of lawyers in practice are unaware of. If they become a partner, they become responsible for generating revenue. And that changes everything. What were the other key reasons why you saw young lawyers in particular leaving industry in your co-chair role?
Yeah. So we have, I suppose, various data points, but honestly, the most honest for me tends to be speaking to young lawyers themselves, or sometimes people reach out to me one-to-one on LinkedIn, even people I don't know, to ask for advice. The reasons are not just one thing. I think the ones that we can all accept are common are high levels of stress and disorganization. But these drive people out of all jobs.
Yeah.
Not just the ones in the legal industry. I think more unique towards the legal industry is a mismatch between impression and reality. Let me break that down a little bit. Most people have an understanding of what lawyers do from TV. Unfortunately, that's just true. Whether it is, if you're old enough, it'd be, Ally McBeal and Practice. If you're less old, it's Suits.
Yeah.
And if you're super old as well as less old, it might be Hong Kong serial dramas about the law. Regardless, all of these paint a glamorous picture, or at least a somewhat sexy view of what lawyers do. And the reality is far from it. And this is problematic because I think if you know exactly what you're in for, even if it's hard, it's less painful. And that mismatch is an issue. I think secondly, there's also a bit of, I wouldn't say it's poor training, but the training that we give our lawyers isn't always right for the job that needs to be done, or at least the modern job that needs to be done.
Give me an example.
So a lot of the mandatory training that happens right now falls within two buckets. It's either substantive law, teaching, that this law says this law does that, this process does this, or it's skills-based. But to me, at least, from what I've seen, it's inconsistent. For the substantive law, we either don't go deep enough or we go far too deep that it's not useful for those who are not going to practice in that area. And for the practical training, it isn't holistic enough. But I'm being intentionally general about this because I don't personally know myself what is the best way to train young people.
Yeah.
Because it is not as if one size will fit all.
Yeah.
If I had to rebuild this ground up, I can't start the solution by saying, oh, how do I train people? I actually think it needs to start with, how do I actually want the legal system to work for the public? Because we have very key stakeholders that exist in Singapore. We have the courts that administer justice through court decisions and court processes. We have the Ministry of Law that is arguably responsible for making sure the laws are clear, they are enforced well, and there's good policy making to ensure that the everyday man can access efficient justice. And then you have all the practitioners, whether they're in-house or in private practice, they are there to do a job, so they need to earn money. That's just a reality. But they too want things to be efficient, but not crazy stressful. And if there are these three groups, there are natural tensions that go between them. The Ministry of Law, from an access to justice point of view, wants everything to be faster. Justice delayed is justice denied, is the old saying. And I can respect that. The courts wants things to be efficient and wants everyone to go by their timelines, their schedules, because there are only a finite number of judges. And if you fit everything to what they're doing, then yes, everything should run faster. And to an extent, I agree. But then you have the practitioners, and generally speaking, we are the ones who seem to be against all these things, because in a bid to earn money, it means that we have to take on multiple cases. To take on multiple cases means that we have to manage schedules and timings and clients of different matters. And that means we can't possibly meet the efficiency requirements of the courts, or that is asked of us. That is baseline scenario that has, I would say, existed for decades. Then you have technology. And I think the idea of technology is messing up a lot of these dynamics. Mm-hmm. Why? If you were to go online right now and type in legal tech or legal artificial intelligence, you're going to get 100 hits about many different products that will tell you that they are the next big thing. It's going to increase your efficiency by 50%. It's all the answers. Stop looking at lawyers. This is a problem because it doesn't actually do all those things. And I say this as someone who likes technology and who promotes it, but it is not the cure that the people who sell it as. And that's a problem because government sides, and I think this goes beyond Singapore, look at technology and say, this is our cure. The courts will try some of this, but also will say, I'm willing to take on technology, both myself, and I will encourage lawyers to do that, but I'm also demanding that everyone is very safe with their use of data and protects all the privacy that it needs to. And then you have the lawyers who will say, can I even afford this technology? How long is it going to take to implement? And if I'm going to be responsible for all the risks associated with it, can I be using products where I don't yet know all the risks?
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
And if I want to be very explicit with the problems of artificial intelligence, just by way of a bit of background, how any of these platforms work in a legal context is mostly through technologies where you're entering prompts.
Yeah.
We would be familiar with something like ChatGPT. You ask a question of it and it churns out an answer. Now, the legal version of these tools is slightly modified. So if you were to use a general LLM and you type in a question, it is searching the whole universe of the universe. But in the legal context, sometimes you create your own universe of, let's say, 1,000 documents of a client. We would compile the client's universe, upload it somewhere, and then our queries would be in relation to that universe. Here's the problem. The servers that actually process these queries are not here. They are not in your lawyer's office. Yeah. They are not in Singapore or anywhere in Asia. They currently exist only in the US and the UK. What's happening is, firstly, your data has to go into a cloud that allows things to be searched. That's one cloud here. Every time I type in a prompt, whichever tool I'm using, it is sending an instruction for that prompt to be applied to this universe, but processed by a LLM somewhere else in the UK or the US. And then I get an answer to my computer here in Singapore. And every follow-up prompt, that's happening again. It's going there, it's going there, it's going back. And everyone is pressuring law practices to use this technology. But at the same time, there's a big cane, useful analogy for Singapore, but there's a threat of caning here, because if any lapse in data security happens, the lawyers are responsible.
Yeah, for sure.
Our professional obligations have not diminished. If anything, we've been warned specifically about this. And the truth is, I can't protect the data any better. I have no control over what's happening in those servers, either the storage ones for cloud or the LLM processing servers in the UK and the US.
Yeah.
All of my vendors gives me a contract saying, oh yeah, we use this sort of encryption and all that. I don't know if that's really going to protect me if something goes wrong for my biggest clients. And ironically, it is the biggest clients, your multinational corporations, your banks, your financial institutions of other sorts, they impose the tightest data security measures, sometimes requesting that we use closed systems because they are, exactly, they are so afraid. And I can understand why. I mean, if you're dealing with delicate intellectual property or perhaps sensitive products, which for tax reasons you don't want to show in certain regions and jurisdictions, well, that just gives me a situation. So the reality is your biggest clients for whom would get the most benefit from these services also impose the most restrictions on my data.
Yeah.
So I can't use it for them.
It's a chicken and egg.
Right. And I feel somewhat that the lawyers are being squeezed in the middle because all the marketing suggests that this is the second coming.
Yeah.
But when you look behind the hood, there are so many restrictions, and the law firms are the ones that have to sort this out. Don't get me wrong, though. I'm not here to say that the legal technology can't help us.
Yeah.
It can. But as law firms and as lawyers, we need to do a good job of understanding how it works. And that's where I think so many people fail. They don't spend the time going behind the slide deck of what the tool does.
Yeah.
And actually figuring out how it helps your processes.
It's very superficial in most cases. Right?
It is. I mean, besides buzzwords, and I think most senior managing partners just about can tell you what Gen AI means and what is an LLM and not go beyond that. Beyond the buzzwords, no one really looks behind it. Usually they'll convene a subcommittee of their younger lawyers to look into these issues and submit a recommendation, but that's not good enough. It really is.
Let me ask you, from a client's perspective, how do you think they and you can differentiate what is a good lawyer and a bad lawyer?
This is going to be controversial. I think every lawyer thinks of themselves as a good lawyer, but I'm going to modify your question a little bit.
Go for it.
Because I would say the question ought to be, who is the right lawyer for you? Because a bad lawyer might still be the right lawyer for you. And I honestly don't know. We all strive to be the best versions of ourselves. But in this day and age, if you need a lawyer, the right lawyer for you is firstly the one who listens to you. If your lawyer isn't obsessed with the outcome that you want, there is something wrong. So for me, that's baseline.
I love
you
that.
You need a lawyer who's actually routinely asking you, what is it exactly that you are after? The second thing is, once they've understood what you're after, they give you options. And I want to emphasize this, options with an S at the end. Why is it options? Because the truth is, as lawyers, we learn about the law. We learn substantive law. We learn procedural law, how to do things in court. And even within those two things, they should be able to tell you, okay, you could do this. It will take how long? It will cost how much? Here are your approximate odds. Or you can do this, whether it's arbitration or some sort of application early on. Here is the length of time. Here is the costs. Here is your potential outcome. The best lawyers will give you options that are hybrids of these things, and perhaps will give you guidance on how to achieve it without court or with minimal court intervention or disputes. They will talk about things like neutral evaluation. They can talk about things like adjudication, mediation, structured negotiation. All of these are tools in the arsenal. So if you encounter a lawyer who's only telling you, yeah, you have a case, I'd be worried that I'm not seeing all the options.
Yeah.
So that's the second thing. Lawyers should be able to give you options. And then after that, a lawyer should be able to be flexible with a strategy. So you would have seen the options and you would have picked an option. But the truth is, this is real life. Factors and variables will change all the time. Your lawyer should be flexible to adapt to those changes, even telling you, oh, with this change that's come in, this strategy that we're doing, it's no longer right. We may need to reconsider. And that's an ongoing process. I've not talked about the substantive law so far. I've not talked about the process. I've just talked about how your relationship should be with your lawyer.
Yeah.
And finally, I've listed 3 qualities so far. I think the 4th I would say is your lawyer should be honest with you. Here's the truth. As lawyers, we make mistakes all the time. All the time. I'm not saying they're huge things that are going to lose you the case, but they could be just micro things. Whether it is a typo in a date for a document, from 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Or maybe we cited something that was the rules 9 months ago, but last week, unknown to me, a case came out. I wasn't aware of it at the time. The best lawyers are honest with you as your client and saying, yeah, we messed up. Sorry about that.
Yeah, I love it. That's what it should be, but it's probably rarely is.
Well, the problem is many lawyers are afraid to be honest with their clients, and for good reason. We might have our pants suit off us. Yeah. The insurer will come after us, and it's a choice. But I much prefer the lawyers who will say, yeah, we messed up. Firstly, because it's so easy and it's so clean. But the truth is most clients come to me because they messed up as well.
Yeah.
So if they can't accept it from their lawyers and we treat each other with respect as professionals and we're doing this together, then there's an issue. So for me, those are the greatest 4 qualities. Now, beyond that, your lawyer obviously needs to be skilled in the area that they're advising on.
Yeah.
That goes without saying, but within reason, you can learn that. If you're diligent, you can learn that. And more importantly, with technology, you can find those answers out. But the 4 things that I told you are things that have nothing to do with technology.
Yeah.
They have nothing to do with how good your vendor or your practice management systems are. They are the qualities of the person.
I'm curious, in your legal career so far, have you been advised or have you read books or been taught about the art of human communication, negotiation, sales? Because I've had a few career coaching clients, and where they all struggle, it's really 2 things. Specifically, how do they generate more business? So for most of the lawyers that I've worked with, they think networking is the be-all and end-all versus a very targeted approach. So for example, if I wanted to reach out to you to do business, let's just say you don't need me as a lawyer today. I still want to engage you because I want to develop that relationship, because there will be a day when you do need to work with me. But if we already know each other, it's probably in play. And then the second thing is negotiation, because these are skills beyond the law, right? How you use your knowledge of the law to be great. I'm just curious, what have your experiences been thus far?
Well, I think when I first became a junior partner and the pressure to bring in clients first arose, I did turn to some books, some TED Talks, things like that, about how to grow your business. And you do talk to some of the older hands about what they do. What I discovered was I think some of the relationship and network building done by the older lawyers, I thought was a little bit inefficient. It was a lot of dinners. It was a lot of golf games, and in some instances, KTV. I didn't like any of it, mostly because I thought it was incredibly tiring. And while it could lead to good returns and a good relationship one-to-one, I don't think it had the sort of outreach that I wanted. More importantly, as a method of networking, I don't think it actually showcased skills that my potential clients needed to see. And as I think about my clients nowadays, what they truly value is actually efficiency. They want a lawyer who probably isn't having a drink on weekdays and is out playing golf in the morning, but someone who is skilled but can communicate briefly, who can give a simple answer to a question, and who is well aware of what developments are in the world. So my method currently of outreach is more education-based. If you don't know me, you're probably going to first interact with me where I'm speaking at an event, or I've done an interview such as this, or I write about something, and you're going to find that I'm quite curt and honest. I'll probably deliver a genuine opinion and not necessarily what somebody wants me to say, and I'm going to get to the point, because I'm giving people a preview of what they will see if they engage me. Now, if someone asks me, do you want to go out for a drink or something? I'm going to tell them, yeah, let's do coffee from 4 to 4:45.
Yeah.
It's going to be 45 minutes because I respect their time and I respect
Vice
mine.
versa. Yeah.
And I'll be there 5 minutes early because that is my calling card.
Yeah.
If you engage me, it's going to be efficient.
I like that.
But equally, if it turns out that we communicate well, we have a good time and we share some interests, I will invite you to my bar and we can have a drink on Friday night because Friday night is when we have fun.
That's a good segue. Now tell me, how did you get into the Blackbird business?
Oh, well, it starts with how most drinks-related activities start. I love music. I have from a very young age. And probably on an unhealthy way, earlier on in my career, I find myself visiting a lot of watering holes as a way of de-stressing. And one that was convenient and close to my workplace was Timber. Back then, Timber had a number of music outlets in Singapore. There was the original at the substation at Armenian Street, tucked away in the back in what was Kuo Pao Kun's poetry garden initially. And then they had another branch at the Arts House, live music, open air. And I found it as a way of unwinding. I think in a high stress environment, you do have to find these pockets of time to decompress.
100%.
And having a drink, listening to music and quality musicians doing something they love was that unpacking for me. And within time, I got to know the owners very well. I knew some of the musicians, and we would often talk about having our own place. And then, of course, COVID hits. And with it came closures of so many live music venues, places that I loved, places that I grew up with. I mean, I think about, for example, Walla Walla at Holland Village.
Yeah.
I did used to sneak in even when I was a bit young, just so that I could catch my favorite musicians, favorite band. It wasn't about the drinks. It was about hearing your favorite guitar riff or hearing that drum solo 2 meters away from the musicians. And there was something powerful and deep. Yes, you feel it, you know? And I've always wanted to be a part of that. It's one of those boyhood dream situations. But when COVID came and things closed, a whole bunch of us were really upset. One, because we couldn't get our fix, but two, because there were all these legendary local musicians who had now potentially lost their gig.
Yeah.
And they weren't sure what they were going to do. And it was just a terrible situation all around. So we decided that we need to stop talking and start doing. So 4 of us started to shop around for a venue. And my business partners are Danny Lung, who is the CEO of the Timber Group, Surath Godfrey, who is the lead singer of a band called Reverie, and a long-standing musician in his own right, and Brandon Leong, who runs a chain of ramen restaurants. So sort of between us, we've got someone who has organized F&B and music, live music, someone who is a performer predominantly himself, and an F&B specialist. And then you've got me. Everyone needs a token lawyer. So the 4 of us sort of put our heads together and we looked at a number of venues. I think venue is important. And then we settled at Gilman Barracks because it was this beautiful black and white house. And it was all enclosed and it had lovely space and parking and somewhat out of the way, but not fully. We fell in love with the place and then we just ran with it.
How's the journey been?
It's tough. I mean, anyone who is even remotely involved with an F&B related business will tell you the struggle. Fortunately, I think we've been fairly lucky. People who go to the Blackbird tend to love it and are repeat customers. But it's a hard struggle. I mean, for me personally, I've been on a health journey and I've discouraged people from drinking too much, but it doesn't technically align.
It's not conducive, with the bar business.
It's not aligned with the bar business, so there's a bit of give and take there. But ultimately, I try and market it to people as a place of respite. Singapore is great about access, and if you needed a fancy cocktail bar, dime a dozen.
Yeah,
you can go to the Amoy Street area and find a fancy restaurant and pay $250 a head. There's a time and place for those things.
For sure.
There's the rooftop at Marina Bay Sands for that visiting guest coming for the first time.
Yeah.
and the fancy nightclub. But at least at my age, I don't really want any of those things when it's for me.
Yeah. Also low key.
So I asked myself what we actually wanted to build was a place that you could go 2 or 3 times a month with your mates that's low pressure. I don't want to dress up.
Yeah.
I don't have to be there till 2 in the morning. I'm not there to be seen. I'm actually there to hear my favorite rendition of a Bon Jovi song or Led Zeppelin, because that's going to make me feel good after a couple of weeks of grind. And you can turn up in a singlet and slippers and we'll embrace you with that as well. Or you can come dressed to the nines and have champagne. We don't care. We have everything from fries to oysters. So it's almost as if our menu reflects whatever state that you want to come join us with. And
that's what life's all about, right?
Exactly. And you know what? There's a part of it that was modeled after my time in the UK, because, you know, we all had our local pub. It was the place where you wanted to be outside, but wasn't a night out.
Yeah.
And I've always been trying to recreate that or find some place in Singapore. And suddenly there are the Irish pubs that look the part, but I never really felt offered anything more besides the pint. So Blackbird for me sort of fills that void. It's that place that you can go to and run into someone that, you know, is a regular there as well.
Yeah.
Just for a night out that's low key. And I think that's badly missing.
It is.
Yeah.
And talk to us about your health journey, because one of the things you and I were talking about offline was most of us, when we get deep into our careers, completely stop working out, right? Because we're focused on business and we're trying to get up and running, but it's detrimental to our health long term. So I'm an advocate, you know, to really try and get people on that fitness journey. Tell us about your journey, because it's been miraculous.
My journey has been a relatively new introduction to my life. I was on that path. I had completely disregarded my health in every conceivable way. I wasn't exercising. I wasn't watching my diet or my weight. And food was the last thing on my mind. It was a low priority. And honestly, if you're doing a lot of business networking, you end up drinking a lot as well. That is the worst.
Yeah.
The worst of the worst. And that carried on pretty much throughout my entire professional career until last year, 2024. The catalyst for me came in the form of a wake-up call. End of 2023, I had honestly been feeling like crap for many, many months. And I went for a comprehensive medical screening just for myself, and the results were not flattering. I mean, beyond the fact that I already knew that my BMI was high and my weight was high and my fat percentage was high, but it very starkly introduced what the consequences were going to be.
Yeah.
Talking, major organs, potential diseases. And it was the wake-up call that I needed. I knew that there needed to be change, and not gradual, slow change, but for right now. And you sort of have to decide. It is a decision. Who am I going to be? How am I going to live? What will it look like in 10 years, in 15, in 20? And when you ask yourself all these questions, if you find that I'm not on that path, you change it. The change for me was instant. I got my results on the 30th of December, 2023. In the morning. I had my last drink on New Year's Eve, 31st December 2024. It was actually with my mum. We were at the Blackbird for New Year's Eve. That was the last drink I had. And I said, no alcohol for 2024. And I kept to it, except for half a glass of champagne at my farewell party. So it was no alcohol. It was a commitment to dropping weight, but not just dropping weight, but getting strong, building
muscle, yeah,
building a body that would, burn off fat, keep my metabolic rate up, and critically, and this floated to the top, feeling good about yourself. Because the truth is, feeling good to some people might be waking up and having a good flex on your bicep in the morning. That could be feeling good. Feeling good could be, pardon me, but going to the bathroom 3 times a day, being really regular and feeling light on your feet. Feeling good to some might be being able to do that 10K or that Spartan race or High Rocks. So everyone has their definitions, but I would advocate setting that as your goal. Have a goal of feeling good every day. And it's been ups and downs. In January and February, I did what most people did and tried to self-help. So it was a lot of YouTube videos staring at very attractive people, teaching you how to do body weight squats and that sort of thing. And yes, I saw some benefits to it. I did definitely drop some water weight. I was at 100 kilos as of 1st of Jan, but I knew that I wasn't progressing as much as I did, and it was too painful. So I signed up with one of those personal training gyms where you get essentially someone to harass you in what will become both the best and worst relationship of your life. And he was on my case from day one. I've never felt so watched, but it was brutal. It was 3 days a week of personal training. I started in the evenings, and it was full body every day. And I felt pain that I've never felt in my life. But it was a shock. But I stuck to it. I stuck to watching what I eat, being aware of how I felt about food, hydrating, getting steps in, rinse and repeat. And I did this for months. By June, so I started the personal training journey early March 2024. By the end of June 2024, I had already dropped about 20 kilos.
Amazing.
And my body fat had dropped from about 35% to 18%. And a huge increase in muscle. I was spending weekends hiking, kayaking.
Living life, enjoying life.
Enjoying life. And looking good does come with some benefits. You do notice the gaze around you changing a little bit as the waistline goes down and your style and dressing improves as well. And you feel good. And then finally they set me up for a photo shoot, the gym, which I did in early September, and that was probably my leanest. I think I dropped to 14% body fat, and I was down.
What did you weigh in on that day of the photo shoot?
I did. I was 74 and a half kilos.
Colossal, 26 kg.
Yeah, lean, very, very lean.
Yeah.
At the time, it was a good day.
It's a great day. Unfortunately, as we get older in our careers, it's very difficult to sustain that level of leanness. But it's also a mental battle with yourself, right? And a commitment. And I think a lot of other people, because we're men, a lot of other men admire that. They'll admire your journey. They know how difficult it is. You can't cheat a great physique, right? It takes a lot of hard work and discipline.
There's no hiding. The truth is, it'll show up on the scale, and it'll show up on the belly every morning when you get up.
Yeah.
And it's actually a new way of life. And I hate when people say that, but unfortunately it's true. It's deciding every day that you want to take care of yourself. And you're investing, just as you would in the dollars and cents to making yourself comfortable in old age.
Yeah.
Your investment in how you feel
is everything.
Is everything. And some people think, oh, I'm doing this so that I'll live longer in 20 years. I don't think so.
Yeah.
I'm also doing it because of the performance boost I have in my day-to-day life
100%.
now.
It changes everything.
Absolutely. I mean, one point of lawyering that's particularly hard on your body is when we go into hearing days where it's whole days in courts and nights preparing. That's when you fully realize and you appreciate that if your body and your mind is in tip-top shape, you can do that job better.
Yeah.
You're not going to be on the floor struggling, but it's just another day.
100%.
And it comes from the clarity of good rest, a little bit of exercise, and just maintaining yourself. And one lesson that I think I learned unintentionally is how to listen to what my body needs and what my body wants.
Yeah.
And some people ask me, how is it I'm eating junk food? And I tell them it's because my body wanted it today.
Yeah.
Some days I'll wake up and I'll feel a bit puffy, and that's my body's way of telling me you need more sleep, you got to drink more water, have a clean eating day. Other days, the body feels good. Maybe I want to go to the beach, but it tells me I need some sun today. Sometimes I wake up and I think about cheesecake, and that's my body telling me, go eat a damn cheesecake. It's fine.
Yeah.
You'll be okay.
That healthy balance. I think it's interesting because when I look at my two older kids, they don't understand. I'll say, let's go for a run. Let's go and do something together. And they don't want to go for a variety of reasons. They're both very fit. But I was trying to explain to them, sometimes I need that motivation. And that gives me one-on-one time with you guys, which they don't get. And I said, Tara's dad was extremely overweight. and she had to basically hide food, lock the fridge. My dad had a stroke when I was 14, and I had to look after him. And then unfortunately, he enjoyed a drink. I'd have to make sure sometimes I walked him home from the pub. And I was trying to explain to the kids, you guys don't understand what it's like having a fit, healthy dad. It's the other way around. But sometimes I need your help. But they still don't get that. But look, it's been a real pleasure having a chat with you.
Yeah.
There's so much wisdom that you've got, and you live life. Now, what are you doing now next in your career? Just to wrap up, like, what are the things you're doing now in this new last leg of your journey?
Well, I don't know if it's going to be the final stage.
But it's definitely not, you're still young. How old are you now? How old are you now?
I'm 38. I'm going to be 39 this year.
Okay.
But in this stage with my new firm, I've really got three priorities. Having spent a good dozen plus years honing my craft in court, I'm going to look to do a little bit more appellate work, some of the more higher level critical thinking. It's been asked of me, and I'm going to focus on that.
Brilliant.
On the court side. But equally, some of the key stakeholders have asked me to really help in the implementation of new legal technologies and look at some of the issues that younger lawyers are facing. So that's a priority for me too. I'm very invested in the idea of improving systems at all types of law firms so that we will get a bit closer to that elusive efficiency that makes all the stakeholders really happy. But beyond all of that, I really want to make life quite sustainable for myself. So the selfish part and selfish piece in all of that is I actually want to walk the walk when people say I go home at 6 and mean it. And I think it's actually very possible. And I'm going to create that for myself and everyone else that works around me. And we're going to be happy no matter what everyone else might say.
Good man. I love it. Raeza, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
You're welcome.
Good man. Cheers.